23rd, 2021. And if I could, Lynn, starting with you, could you please introduce yourself?
I am Lynn Mazzulli, part of Finance Committee.
Carol Gogolinsky, part of the Finance Committee.
Howard D'Amico, Finance Committee.
Sandy Kuipers, Finance Committee.
Heather Moran, Finance Committee.
Go ahead.
Phil Landry, Finance Committee.
Dick Vandenberg, Finance.
Okay. And Gene, I see you've got here, the first item you had asked to put up was the reserve fund transfer. Do you want to come up?
Actually, the chief and Cheryl are both here,
Okay,
and they're for both of their departments.
okay.
The first one is the fire expense, and that's for emergency work we had to do on engine 1, chief?
Yes.
Chief, if you want to come up, please.
Sure.
And if you would introduce yourself.
Kent Vincent, Fire Chief.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just talk about what you're asking for transfer for.
Okay, we had about $5,500 worth of expenses, emergency repair work. There were safety items, so the truck was put out of service by the DOT. So in order to get those things fixed and make it safe, and so that it pumps at fires, we need to have it fixed. And we did the repairs.
Okay. And is it back in line?
It's back in service, correct.
Okay. Any questions?
What was the item?
Pardon me?
What was the safety repair?
There was an exhaust leak, and there was, they had to rebuild the springs in the rear end, the springs.
Was this a surprise, chief, or not?
It's 23 years old, so it's not really a surprise. It's just, you only have a repair budget when you're trying to keep a fleet of trucks going that are used under adverse conditions, year-round. Can't really tell what's going to break, especially when they're 23 years old.
Does the DOT come into your place and check them?
We had this one come in because it was on capital, and there were some questions on whether we really needed the truck or not.
Oh, okay.
And we told them there were some issues with it, so Matt wanted to bring the DOT in and get an independent inspector, so, to show that we're not exaggerating the situation, I guess, maybe, and the guy crawled into it and put a big red R on the windshield.
For rejection.
Yeah.
You didn't go sneaking around looking at any others?
No. I will bring him back, though.
Keep moving, Carol.
And this
I
was,
had a truck fleet. I know who they are.
Exactly.
and this was the tank truck?
This was engine one. It's an engine, carries 1,000 gallons of water, and it has a 1,250 gallon per minute pump on it.
Okay, and is this the one that with the leaky pump, or is it a different one?
Yes.
Okay.
It has had pump work before, and, absolutely.
Okay, and did they fix the leaky pump thing too?
Well, that's an adjustment. Every year we have them annually tested for the pump test. It passed, but they have to make adjustments to tighten that up. So as the pump wears and it's older, you run out of room after a while.
You're right, yeah, right. So will we be getting a lot more years out of this truck then?
Probably not. It was
Just throwing good money after bad?
correct.
No.
Well,
It's been on capital for 5 years. It lost being funded this year by like a couple of points. So I'm sure next year it'll be right to the top. It's already, I think it was like third or fourth in line at the top of the items that got funded. So it's just such a big ticket item. It's a $600,000 truck, brand new, so that's how that.
They usually last.
How long should they last, or how long do they last in Douglas?
oh,
Okay. Well, most towns, and NFPA says the real useful, and that's the National Fire Protection Association that sets the standards for fire apparatus, and they say 15 years. We're going to be 23 in the fall.
okay,
Douglas, as a rule, anywhere from 20 to 30.
okay. And how often does this truck go out? Like,
Well,
Park years.
for 17 years, it was the lead truck. It was
Okay.
the first due truck that went to every fire. Then when we replaced the one last year, not last year, 4 years ago, it's now the second due apparatus. So it either comes to the fire second, if we need another engine, or it handles, if we're on a call, it handles the next call,
Okay.
if we get multiple calls.
So basically, how many calls a year would you say?
I would say, let's see, we did 340 calls at least 50%,
Okay.
if I had to make a guess.
Now, I know that the fire trucks have to go out pretty much now in every fender bender to make sure that, there's no problems with them. Do you kind of rotate them as you send them out?
We don't rotate the first due, and the first due engine is the one that's the newest and the least likelihood of a breakdown
Right.
at a fire. That's
Right.
where you don't want things to break down.
Exactly.
So like what happened this week, it's a brush season.
Oh, yeah.
So I would rather send a brush truck out, and then if that has 1,000 gallons of water, send that with it.
Right.
Because it's older, I'd rather put that in the woods than a truck that's only 3 or 4 years old,
I guess what I'm saying is, like the older trucks, do they get to move out?
Yes.
Because they sit around and that's not good.
They-
They need to start up and run around a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. And, the guys, they have to pull those trucks out and run them every day to make sure they're going to start and things like that. Because one of the problems we had with the engine was the shoreline wasn't, when we plugged it in, it would short things out, so it would kill the batteries.
Okay.
So that was a significant cost as well.
Gene, I have a question about the form.
Yes?
So it's got an amount requested 5,500 at line item 1, and it's got a line item 3, present balance in said appropriation, 24,113.38. What does that number represent?
That's the balance in the expenditure report, the 24,000?
Yeah,
That's the balance in the account.
Gene,
right now.
24,113.38.
Correct.
Can we be exact?
I don't know if we know that.
So what does that represent?
That is the balance as of March 17th in the expenditure account for the fire department. But because this was
Got it.
unforeseen,
That's-
we know that 24,000 is going to be spent, so we will actually need 5,500 to get us through the Maytown meeting. And then you're going to see a special article where we're going to get from May to June. I didn't want to see the full amount on the reserve fund because, I'm trying to protect that.
Sure.
We got Cheryl coming, and she's going to be in the same situation where we're going to get
Yep.
her through May, and then we're going to put another article on the Maytown meeting to get it from May to June.
Gene,
So
do
we
you-
don't hit the reserve fund for everything.
Do you have the math in front of you as to what the 5,500 expenditure, if approved, would leave in the Finance Committee emergency account?
I don't have that with me. I can get it for you, Howard.
Okay, we may need that, particularly as we hit the second one of these,
Okay.
right? We start with 50, correct?
Correct.
50,000?
You've already done two.
Okay.
You did a $2,000 selection.
If you could get us that math, I would appreciate it. Thanks, Gene. I will entertain a motion to approve the fire department's request for a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $5,500.
I'll make that motion.
Carol's motion, any second?
I second.
Lynn's second, so let's have a voice vote, please, starting with Lynn.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, I apologize, I think we actually have to say our name. And then vote. Yep. So, yep,
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
Carol Gogolinsky, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
Heather Moore, aye.
Phil Landry, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
Okay, and so that motion is carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Steve. You're coming back, though.
And let's take the next request, please.
Cheryl Vadia, Treasurer Collector. So I'm asking for a reserve fund transfer for land court and legal fees. We have currently 9 cases in land court, 5 of which date back to 2017, which there has been a push by economic development to get these foreclosed on for development on Davis Street. Unfortunately, several of them have required very in-depth detail and research of,
Title work.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Just a couple quick questions. You said 9. Cheryl, do you have a perception that all 9 of these will go to foreclosure? Nobody's objecting in any of those situations, as far as you can tell?
The 5 on Davis Street, we got permission to assess them as owner unknown.
Right.
So the heirs are extremely old. Most of them have passed. We're like into grandchildren and children of the grandchildren.
Okay.
Some of the people have already signed off. They have no interest in it at all.
Okay. And the other 4?
The other 4, I don't foresee, I think they're going to take time. One does have title issues on Makowski Drive. And the other one, we've had no response from the family, so. But land court, you have to understand, land court is so backed up. These cases are very old, so they date back to 2015, 17, 9, and 7. So it takes time in land court, and land court's been backed up. They had basically 2 people, John Harrington and his wife, that worked on these municipal tax lien cases. She passed away in this past fall. So they have no help in land court. It's just basically one person, and they'll assign the title to a specific person. If they don't do that title in 60 days, it gets reassigned to somebody else.
Cheryl, I think my concern is just particularly in the last year, none of these are situations where the town is moving forward on a family, a home.
No.
Where people have just been unable to pay taxes.
Nope, this is all, the 5 cases that have, that are in great detail, they're all land.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 12,000 is for legal fees or costs or something?
Costs associated with the in-depth
Just the
research.
costs.
I mean, I've gone to Rhode Island and pulled probates. We've had to hire an outside person to do probate research.
Is the work otherwise done by town council? Or is it-
She's been doing a lot of it, and then I did some, and then we hired a woman who specifically does genealogy work.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't foresee this being a consistent cost going forward. I mean, these cases have just been extremely involved.
Okay.
How much is the total for again?
The request is $12,000.
Okay. And do we have any of this sent to us, or I didn't check my email before the meeting?
The reserve funds?
Yeah,
No.
what the request, is there like an associated list of properties or whatever?
No.
I can send that to you. 5 of them are on Davis Street, and I'll be happy to send the board the other ones.
I'd like to see them.
Okay.
You can bid on the auctions, right? They do get foreclosed, right? The theory
They
is-
get foreclosed on. We'll get judgment eventually through land court. The former owner or owners, in this case, there would be so many, they have 1 year to come forward
Yeah.
and ask permission to use the right of redemption. The town does not have to agree with that. So in some cases, a parcel can be auctioned before the 1-year right of redemption. We don't normally do that.
You revert it to the town?
So the
Under the
town
right
gets
of redemption.
ownership, it comes off of the outstanding list and goes into tax possession. And then should they choose, they would auction it. We actually have an auction coming up in April where we're offering 9. There's 9 offerings, which are tax foreclosures.
Okay, okay. Gene, what was the number of the balance on our account prior to the $5,500 approval?
Prior to both of these, it was 38,000. This is going to bring it down to 20,500.
Okay, all right. Any
Is
other
that
questions?
20,500?
Correct.
And then, just for my, kind of nuance, that gets replenished towards the end of the year for free cash, or how does it? This is an emergency fund from us that is supposed to be depleted? I'm just trying to.
No, it's not supposed to be depleted, no.
No.
Okay.
It's an emergency fund, Phil, so it can be used in emergencies.
And it goes under the Finance Committee budget?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Correct.
And if it's not spent, it gets returned to free cash at the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
But like I said, we're trying to get through to a point where we can address any further ones in May, and then we would save the balance of this in case in June we have anybody, especially the 24/7, all the budgets are pretty tight. So anything puts it over that unforeseen category when you
Yeah,
have,
right.
tight budgets.
Yep.
But we do request that any department that anticipates a need up through June, that we address the needs at the Springtown meeting. And hopefully, between the two vehicles, we can get through June 30th.
Just a mechanism question, that's all. I was
No,
trying
that's
to
fine.
see what the workings are. Make a motion?
I will entertain a motion for approval of the reserve fund transfer request for $12,000.
Make a motion to approve the
Bill's motion,
$12,500.
any second?
Second.
Heather's second. And votes then, starting with Lynn, please.
Lynn Mazzulli, aye.
Carol Gogolinski, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Phil Landry, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
And so that is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before you start, I did leave some materials on the table. You had a fire department budget, a school presentation, as well as the budget for the school, and a capital. Does anybody need any additional copies before you start hearing presentations tonight?
I have the school,
So Howard has all the documents if you want to hold them up.
fire,
So do I have copies?
and
Do I have copies?
Capital budget.
You have one set of each.
Right.
Were any of those changed from the
They were not.
email that you sent us?
No. So you can have,
What
did
you
you have
guys
this
have
one?
is what I have.
I got that.
I think I got that.
Before we move forward, and I apologize, I just would like to,
Good.
Lynn, can I get you to start initialing all 6 of these and move them across the process, please?
Okay.
Carol, if you would.
Slightly. So you're all, everybody's all set?
I believe that we are.
Excellent.
Chief, bear with me for a minute. I just want to clear that paperwork and
No,
we'll
that's good.
move forward.
Just initialing it, Howard?
Yes, down by the signature.
Howard, when things are at land court, is there usually a clock ticking for things have to happen at within a certain time frame, or is it kind of loosey-goosey, or has COVID changed at all?
Doesn't sound like it.
I had a hearing a couple of years ago in land court on what's called a summary judgment motion. It was over 2 years before I even got a decision on a motion in the middle of a case, and that was pre-COVID. I had a hearing scheduled for this Thursday. I got notice of this morning, just bumped out to May. So it's a great court. It's a fantastic court for certain issues. It's the authoritative court state for that. But these tax title cases are mind-boggling in how long, and when I say that, 2, 3, 4, 5 years is not out of the ordinary at all. And what happens is there are multiple opportunities, I think, given by the structure of the system to allow the owner multiple opportunities to redeem, to get current. Most towns would rather get their money than get the property, right? So please, hey, by the way, kind of thing, so.
Yeah, that could be a slippery slope if it was really quick.
Okay, so I've signed, Susan, I'm going to move those across. Sandy to Heather to Phil, and then Dick, if you could. As they're signed, can we have, just, Jean will pick up. Okay, so Kent, if you would, if you've got a few minutes, please.
We're going with the
Chief?
fund transfer.
Oh, great.
Okay, before we get started, I'd like to introduce Assistant Chief Kelly Manning.
Okay,
She's also a paramedic, and she's hazmat technician,
Okay.
diver, trench rescue, the whole, she's got quite the resume, and we stole her from another town, so it's definitely a benefit, and she's going to help the town of Douglas out a lot, I have no doubt.
great. And if I may, with all respect to the introduction, I would ask you to introduce yourself just quickly by name.
My name's Kelly Manning, I'm the Assistant Fire Chief.
Perfect, thank you. Kent, you've already,
Great.
Chief, you've introduced yourself previously tonight, so.
All right, that's
If you would,
fine.
go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to open up by just basically conveying some thoughts to you about what we do as the fire department. Oh, I think a lot of people have a misconception about that. And I just want to sort of go through some things that we do and some of the things that we're up against. So it says at the top of my thing here, of my page, fire budget or fire ambulance budget for FY22. But I will say that, in fact, we are not just the fire department, we're an all hazards fire department. And being so, I would also like to mention that, and I don't mean any disrespect, but in my career here in Douglas, this department has never been adequately funded. And it's not anyone's fault to any, but I want you to understand that our profession is a constantly evolving, and that we're responsible to mitigate and resolve dangerous and challenging situations. And when we show up, it's really not uncommon for us to have many factors already working against us. We're not only tasked to respond to fires and medical emergencies, but we're also faced with emerging hazards such as severe weather. This past year, COVID has really kicked the snot out of us. Active shooters, hazardous materials, technical rescue, just to name a few of some of the things that our department is tasked with. While medical emergencies really comprise most of what we do, and it's a great deal of our call volume, patients are sicker these days, and the paramedic scope of practice is ever expanding. We're getting new medications to give, we're getting new technologies, CPAP, things like that, that keep people alive and require us to train on a regular basis. So to successfully complete and mitigate these types of requires a lot of sophisticated equipment that costs a lot of money, constant training, and a tremendous amount of risk management. We've got about $2.5 to $3 million worth of assets tied up with the fire department, with ambulances and fire trucks in the building, vehicles, and we're tasked with mitigating emergencies and providing service to the residents and the visitors of our town. It's a tremendous undertaking financially, and prior to getting people driver operated so they can operate vehicles appropriately, we have to test our vehicles to make sure that they're meeting National Fire Protection Association standards to keep the firefighters and the citizens safe. And it's a tremendous undertaking to manage and train personnel to learn to operate vehicles, and we must respond to a wide variety of calls, as previously mentioned. We've always strived to be responsible with our funding requests, and we've applied for a number of grants that have really helped the town financially, and we'll continue to do so. We're always applying for grants. We just put in for a grant, an AFG grant through FEMA for a new brush truck, and we're hoping that will be a successful grant that will net us $273,000. However, the town must begin to build personal protective equipment. In the past years, we've got 2 or 3 grants for personal protective equipment. This is the equipment that we wear. We got a $170,000 grant for a self-contained breathing apparatus. This is all money the town did not have to invest in the fire department. Also, back in 2005, Chief Gagne was able to acquire a $500,000 grant for a ladder truck. Now, today, if we were to try to get that ladder truck, that's a $1 million truck today, as opposed to that truck's 16 years old now. So we continue to apply for these grants. We've also applied for recently another grant for personal protective turnout gear, and that hasn't been awarded yet. So we're pretty sure that we'll be awarded $12,000 for that. But it's essential that we maintain a healthy repair budget to assist keeping apparatus battle-ready and safe as possible. We just did a reserve fund transfer. Also, we bought an engine 4 years ago, but our fleet is aging, and with an engine on the capital budget the last 5 years, so now we also have a 16-year-old ladder truck that's going to be coming down the pike, as I said, that we got through a grant a number of years ago. For this reason, you will see some increases in the budget. We cannot have our vehicles not function as intended and be a factor working against us at an emergency scene. So while we're much better than we were last year, if you remember last year, I only had 18 firefighters, and that included my 7 full-time. I got Kelly on board. We're now up to 28 firefighters. We put a bunch through the academy. We were able to grab some per diem people. But there's still a challenge as far as per diem. We've seen this past year through CARES Act money, we've been able to staff a second ambulance, so we're able to get our second ambulance out. And you'll see some numbers I'll throw out to you in a few minutes, but much more successful with that. But in order to keep part-time people, we need to have part-time people to maybe to backfill people when they're on vacations, and also when we send people to the academy. Depending on what academy we send a firefighter to when they come on board, they might be gone for 10 weeks, still have to pay them to be at the academy and back at the, so that's why you see some of those. So I'll get into the numbers of the fire department. FY '22, fire expenses. The Douglas Fire Department is staffed as follows. You have myself, I'm a fire chief and an EMT paramedic. You have a deputy chief who's a highway super and also a basic EMT. You have Kelly now, who's an assistant chief and a paramedic. You have one call captain who's also an EMT, 3 full-time lieutenants, 2 are EMT paramedics, one's an EMT basic. You have 2 call lieutenants, one's an EMT and one's a first responder. We have 9 call firefighters, 5 EMT basics, and 1 paramedic, 2 per diem EMTs and 1 advanced EMT, 4 per diem firefighter EMT paramedics that work for other departments but come work for us part-time. We have, and we have 1 probationary firefighter that is about to enter the academy, and I believe we have 2 or 3 that are going to the academy in the fall, so, or I'm sorry, June. And we have our administrative assistant. So last year during January, from 2020 to December 20th, we did 342 fire calls, 829 EMS calls, which was a 10% increase over 2019, which was 744 EMS calls. Mutual aid to surrounding towns, us sending mutual aid to Northbridge, Uxbridge, anybody who needs it, for ambulance was 33. And mutual aid received from surrounding towns was 12. If you remember last year when I talked about adding the assistant chief, that number was 67 that we received. So having a new ambulance and also having other people in the station has definitely helped us out. And when that's important, that we're getting to people quicker, we're able to intervene and quicker, and it's also revenue for that ambulance to continue to offset the budget and help balance it out. I mentioned 67 times last year. So, ambulance salaries. As far as the fire salaries go, do you want me to go through line by line, or you just want to know the changes? The changes, okay, that's what I thought. All right, so the first one is F2 400, it's a repair and maintenance budget. We went up $5,500. Again, an aging fleet. We also have a truck that I know is going to need tires. It's a tanker. It's a 10-wheel tanker. It has the original tires on it. It's a 2001. So we need to replace those tires. We're going to be looking at a fairly good chunk of change there. We talked about engine 1 and the repairs that we just did to that. We also had some repairs to the ladder last week. But that's the change in that line item. We have physicals 52,905. It's 10,200 is the what we're increasing to. It went up $4,200. And this is for physicals when we have new hires, but most importantly, it's in the firefighters' contract. They have a wellness infectious disease. If they get infected, it's infectious disease. And what it is early screening for cancer, because firefighters have a 67% chance of getting cancer at some time in their career because of the calls they do. So we thought it was good to invest in the quicker we can find a problem exists, the quicker we can get a person healthy again. So, and that goes for cardiac screenings as well. Cellular, 53404 went up $700, and that the reason is I have an assistant chief who has a phone now, and we also have hotspots in the ambulances so that we can do our reports in the ambulance, and we have access to our reporting system. We went up $500 on uniforms, which was just an incremental thing for the call personnel, shirts and stuff like that. 58,500 additional equipment. We went up to $7,000, an increase of $4,750. The hydraulic tools that we have, the tools that cut people out of cars and tractor trailers. We had a bad tractor trailer accident, 2 of them, this past year. The batteries are very expensive. We just replaced a number of them. That was $2,500 for that, and now I got to do the other half. So there's those. And also, we had to replace a lot of forestry hose. This is right now is our busiest season as far as forest fires. We've already been out 3 or 4 times in the past week, and not only to our town, but other towns as well. It's very dry, so it's just that time of the year. And that's what those expenses would come out of. And then replacement equipment. I mentioned turnout gear. We've been able to get grants. The problem with grants is that everything expires at once. If you're at 10,000, if you have 15 sets of gear and you got it all on a grant, 10 years, NFPA says it's got to be put out of service. So what we're trying to do is implement, incrementally replacing 5 or 6 sets of gear every year. So the total for expenses for the fire is $132,550. I forgot to mention the salaries at the top. The salaries are pretty much all contractual. The only one that's not is the clerk, who does the billing and the stuff, all the other clerical stuff at the fire station. So $469,364 is the salaries. Added together, you get $601,914. That's for the fire side.
Chief, question on
Yes.
What percent is that above last year's budget, more or less? Do you have any idea?
Oh, let's see.
About 10%.
I'm just trying to think about it.
541,664.
Yeah, it's about 10. It's about 10%.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to ambulance salaries, unless there's more questions.
I have it in my notes from last year.
Okay. Okay, so ambulance salaries. The biggest increase here was, we went up 40,000 on part-time wages. I talked about sending people to the academy and backfilling shifts, and what was the other one? Oh, yeah, vacation. So we had started a little low. I talked to Matt, so we figured this was better, especially with the per diem help that are helping us out as well. So that increased $29,400 to backfill shifts of vacation and sending recruits to the academy. So the ambulance salaries was $395,404 for FY22. That's a misprint there. It's FY22. My apologies. Expenses, $53,406 license and subscriptions. That went up to $10,250. And part of the problem there was it was a 5% increase on our software, both on the IMC side, which is the dispatch console, and then the side where we're actually doing our patient care reports, which is another software, which is AmbuPro. We had to buy a feature. We thought we had it, but apparently we didn't. So what happens is once you do a call and you close out the call, it automatically emails that report to the hospital. So they're getting a record of it. So that's obviously an upgrade that we needed to cover. So 5,500 medical supplies. We went up $1,000, from 27,000.
That's fine.
Okay, and then uniforms, we went up 500 on the other side as well. We did both 500 on the fire side and 500 on the ambulance side. So the total expenses for the ambulance side was $102,461 for a proposed ambulance budget for FY22 of $497,865.
Okay,
That's
great.
it.
Any questions?
Oh, Bill, we got the new ambulance, right? That was last year's, the big, through the chair to the chief.
Yep.
When did we get that, or realize that? And
Actually-
put it in operation?
Okay, Phil, we got an ambulance in 2018 in November, and then in 2019, we got another one. And 100,000 of that was money we got from the state through Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna.
Okay. So I remember last year's budget process, we were talking about you're going to get a revenue increase or a decent revenue increase. So I'm wondering, when it went into, when you actually had 2 ambulances, what part of the year? In other words, what percentage of the year did you have 2? And what percentage?
This past year, we had 2 for the whole year. All of 2020, we had 2.
Yeah, I lose time sometimes, I forget. I'm just trying to.
No, I get it.
This standpoint,
I totally
I'm thinking,
get it.
All right, revenue.
Yep,
What
no,
are
I
we
get
getting
it.
in? How
Right.
much did we realize from that?
I'm not sure, do you have that number, Kelly?
Yeah, so, do you want to talk about what's in the
I don't want to,
receipts account?
I would say revenue from 2019 to 2020.
Okay, it's right there. So on fiscal year 19, it was 383,799, and then in fiscal year 20, it was 411,753.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
it's like
it's-
a little less than 10% or so, somewhere around it?
Yeah,
That's the idea, it's coming up, right?
it is, it is.
And you showed us that the mutual aid calls went down 82%.
Right.
That's revenue right in that we would have otherwise had to give out.
Yeah.
But mutual aid to surrounding towns also decreased from 41 to 33.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Because nobody was out on the
we
road,
can't
Right.
help.
And
Right.
Yeah, right.
right?
But it.
part of it, I would say, would be that, there's
Right.
nowhere, there's a lot less people on the roads. And for a period of
That's true.
when COVID started last year, people were afraid to go to the hospital.
Yep.
They obviously were scared to death
Right.
of going to the hospital. So we had a 2 or 3 month period, even though we were we had cases in town, we were transporting people, but there were people who were on the edge,
Yeah.
you know? So it was only those who were critically sick and probably waited too long. That's just how I feel, you know? That would be what I would guess that would be.
So how many people are going to the academy? Like, you're talking about, this is a big increase in the budget, so you kind of look for little places that you could maybe, are they all required to go to the academy?
By NFPA, they're supposed to be certified firefighters. They're supposed to have a certain base level of training, and that's where you get it, is at the academy.
Okay, so how many are we talking this year?
We just put 3 through, and,
We have another 4 going.
yeah, we have another 4 going. One's a full-timer, so depending on which academy she's at, whether it's the 10-week program or the nights and evenings program, nights and evenings and weekends program, but we'd still have to cover her while she was at the academy.
Right, that's a lot of coverage.
It's a lot of coverage.
It is,
And this is required and necessary.
Absolutely. She didn't come in the door with any training as a firefighter, and right now it's extremely challenging to find paramedics that already have firefighter training. So she was the most suitable candidate to pick from, who would be a good fit for us at the time, which is why we chose to hire somebody who didn't have training as a firefighter.
Okay.
right now, there is a paramedic shortage. It used to be, a lot of times, you could get firefighters from other departments, or there were plenty of paramedics. It's just, there's not a whole lot of people that are going into the field. And actually, the state started, they made the standards more strict a few years ago, where they closed some of the programs that weren't college accredited, and they moved it over. So that caused, like, you had programs that was pumping out 300 or 400 medics a year. Well, if you don't have that, that's a big loss to people that are out there, available. So they're not coming in with cross-trained for fire and EMS before. Sometimes you have to settle for one and get them some training on the
It's
other.
not a problem that's unique to our community at all.
Just out of curiosity, are most of the recruits young people? Or are these people who want?
I would say they're younger, yeah. I think the oldest one we have right now is probably late 30s, early 40s.
They expect them to.
We, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And on the cardiac screenings, everybody gets a cardiac screen?
This is something that's being worked out with the union through negotiations, but this is something I put in place a couple of years ago to be able to put this into the budget. And right now it's not something that's punitive. In other words, you can't force a person to do it, but it definitely benefits them you know, when they're exposed to some of the things they're exposed to make sure they're not sick once a year.
We can catch a problem
Cardiac
early.
screening?
Yeah, we can catch a problem early and keep them on the job, so we're not paying out a lot of money in IOD and backfill of shifts.
The two number
Like
one killers of
asymptomatic
firefighters are
in there?
cardiac issues and cancer.
Cancer, yeah, absolutely, but asymptomatic, and you just send them for, what is that, just an EKG then, or?
No, it's actually, well, why don't you explain it?
It's a stress test, it's an EKG, there's ultrasounds which look at cardiovascular function as well as can be looking for cancer, and oftentimes they find cardiac anomalies in young people that can be very dangerous when you're put under the strain of operating in an emergency. So it basically can help detect that there might be a problem brewing or that can be treated before something
Generally,
is.
you'd have symptoms, though, before
Not
that would-
necessarily.
Yeah, well, we could argue that. Okay, I'm all set, thank you.
You've got the staffing here on the top. Does that include the EMTs? I know a lot of them are EMTs. There was nothing on staffing on the ambulance.
Oh, well, I mentioned in the beginning that they were either a paramedic or an EMT.
Right, but you've got them all, they're all in here.
Right.
That's all I wanted
Yep,
to know.
yep, they're cross-trained for both
Yeah,
departments.
that's good. How do you determine when you're paying them under which budget?
That's very difficult.
Yeah, that's a nut we don't want to crack tonight, I don't think,
Okay,
Carol. It's a long,
Couple of quick follow-ups.
Sure.
So the first one is for Jean, through the chair. The grant process, when they do the grant process and they get funds in, does that go directly into their funding for the year, or does it go back to free cash?
It's in addition to the appropriation. So
Okay.
the grant account.
So it adds money onto their total
To
budget?
their department, correct.
Okay, and we don't have any way of knowing what that is or where it's coming from?
Well,
per se?
it's set up on the general ledger, I know.
You guys see it. You guys obviously see it, but in other words, right now in our decision-making process, we have no idea.
Right now, they have the EMPG grant and the fire safe and the senior safe grants. Those are typical reoccurring grants that I see on a yearly basis.
Okay.
The other ones the chief has spoken about tonight were, in addition, right, we haven't gotten those in a couple of years, chief?
no, we have,
Firefighters assistance?
right, yeah. I think 2015 was the last time we got one.
I'm good. It was more mechanical, again, the same thing. And then, so the income allocation for the new ambulance, does that go directly into their budget as well, or does it come back to the general fund?
The ambulance fee is a receipts reserved for appropriation account, so all revenue goes into that account, and then we transfer $340,000 from that account to the general fund to help fund the ambulance. So they're not self-supporting, but $340,000 does get transferred as a revenue source for the operating budget of the ambulance.
Good. And the last thing I had was, on your, through the chair to the chief again, on your budget, do you typically add an amount? I mean, I know I haven't really seen it lately, but when the years allow, do you allow a certain amount for maintenance and upgrades and things like that?
Yeah,
Or does that just go in capital?
No, it's, there's line items in the repairs and maintenance account. But it covers sometimes parts of the building, parts of, radio systems,
Yep.
things like that. And it's not just apparatus, it's a number of things.
Okay.
Capital would handle anything over $10,000 that would last more than 5 years.
Now, are we going into a whole new radio system? I think the police were talking about that. We're going to be going into a whole new type of system.
We are.
Anyone else? Okay, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Assistant. Don't get titles. Don't get titles.
Howard, can I ask one more question for Jean? Just
Sure.
kind of through the chair to Jean.
But I
Estimated
said thank you,
revenue increase
Captain,
this year?
to her. She's not a captain, she's the assistant.
Our income, in
So I
other
said,
words,
don't
the
get
income
titles.
for the town, the taxes
Probably your
and all
first
the
time in.
other permits, et cetera, what,
So if there's
what was
part of
the
it that
total
you don't,
income increase that we're
what,
expecting?
if, like, these things,
Percentage-wise, sorry.
I just don't agree.
But if you look
So
at the
what-
budget
what's our
that
part in
that's
this?
online,
Right?
Yeah,
It's the
it's still
debate
working on it.
forever. Our part is
working on
tweak it
I know we increased
to
the estimated receipts by 2%.
recommended budget that has X or Y in it, and we vote on whether to recommend.
So there's.
You say, I want to reserve
But
a
if you were just a
line, say,
ballpark, total
that
number,
line, I think should be appropriate. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the
oh, it's comedy now.
budget of 600,000 to 588,
Right,
or
okay.
562.
It's like cellular phone math, right? You're not expected to understand it, and there's no way to calculate it, and everybody just keeps spending. I get it, I get
Crowd
it.
responded to that.
Okay.
Board of Selectmen is recommended. But Sandy, that's that age-old debate. We will have trouble winning,
Right, because
particularly on
that,
a couple of small.
Well, no, it's just for
that's
general input.
expensive screening for an asymptomatic person.
I got it, I got it. There are a whole,
So if we keep,
so what
you know,
happens every year is
increasing
the
10 to
the small ones,
12%
just, they're
for
hard
every
to beat.
department,
They're hard-
Right?
then we need to make.
You're
up
lucky to
some
take on a
income
couple of big
somewhere,
ones.
We have to
Right,
present
yeah.
a balanced budget every year.
right? Sure.
And I can tell you that the assumptions they use is there is some cannabis money, there is, from the host agreements, there's, like I said, 2.5% plus new growth, estimated receipts went up 2%, and building permits, I believe, has an increase outside of the 2% for the estimated receipts. I can, like I said, I think you're better off looking at Matt's sheet. I can send you some of the cherry sheet information that we have. We do use the governor's house fund numbers.
Mm-hmm.
We typically do not get cherry sheet information until after we've crossed the fiscal year. And last year it was extremely late.
Right. Yeah, no, I remember
The
that.
governor's numbers are used until, you know, for budgeting purposes. And just to remind everyone here, I usually give this little talk, we are now, and that's for the last many, many years, we use the annual town meeting in the spring and the fall town meeting to kind of handle the fiscal year's budget. So FY '22 will be handled by the annual town meeting plus the fall town meeting. Because we get the cherry sheet late, we have certified new growth in October. So we just don't have all the pieces, so we have to use the two town meetings.
Capital Improvement Committee,
You need
please.
to buy a new car. Taxes go up.
I love those. Those are my favorite.
Hello,
Come on
how
up.
you doing?
Right?
Go ahead, if you would, please
Yeah,
introduce
Mike
yourself.
Fitzpatrick, Capital Improvement.
All right. Michael, go ahead. What do you have today
All
for
righty.
this year?
And we went through our,
We don't have, Gene, do we have a list in front of us here?
I think it's this one.
Oh,
yeah, you should have the memo right here,
A little memo.
right on the bottom, the 4 items.
great. That helps. Go ahead.
Okay, so we went through this year's process, reviewed all the requests, presentations to the committee, and the committee had scored each and every item, and these particular 4 items that are on the memo, which would be the generator for this building, the improvement to the security systems for the school department, the roof for the municipal center, the main roof, as well as the purchase of a 1-ton pickup truck to be used for the highway, fire, building and facilities, and also a support vehicle. So it's going to be a multi-department vehicle. The current vehicle that the building and facilities maintenance has, it's in sad shape, and it's in need of repair, or replacement, actually.
So the truck will replace as opposed to be
Correct.
in addition to?
No, it'll replace it, yes.
Been around for a long time.
So I know that for tonight, it won't help, but maybe, and I know it's a year out, but
Yep.
for future, I think in the past, we've often seen kind of a list of 10 or 15 or 20 items that
Oh,
go.
you did for the 5-year plan?
The 5-year plan.
Well,
Yep, yep.
even that got considered, and so you could see item 5 or 6 that didn't make the cut. and get an idea of what, those were in relation to the 4 you're looking for approval on.
Okay.
So is that something you could send us?
Yeah, we could send you the results of the scoring sheet. That wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I like that. Heather, you talk about really the
But
5-year.
But the
plan?
5-year plan, we have our meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Happens to be after today, so
Yeah.
we haven't voted on our 5-year plan, and we'll be doing that tomorrow.
If you could in the next couple of weeks, Mike, even just send through Gene or through me,
Yeah,
the 5-year plan
yeah, I'll be sending all that stuff to Gene
and the
anyways,
scoring sheet.
and the
I'd like-
scoring
I'd
sheet
like
as
to see
well.
the scoring
Okay.
sheet, Yeah,
Yep.
thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. What you'll see on the scoring sheet is there's a fire truck that they had presented. But with further evaluation, it got moved, it's going to get moved out a few years.
Okay.
So, but you're going to see that it scored very high, but it changed.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
sure.
I'm just glad to finally see the roof is going to finally be replaced. I mean, it's been on the list, I know, for a couple of years.
Well, with hope, it's going to get replaced.
I know, but I'm glad that it finally made the cut, that it's actually going in front of the town, because that has been a major concern with everything we've been doing in this building of late. So I'm glad to see
No,
that it finally got there.
Absolutely. Adam will probably be the happiest person in the
Look
room.
at Adam right there, 'cause he's over right here with us. So, that's all I have, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Questions, anyone? Fantastic.
Yeah.
That
Well
was,
done.
that was a lot better than the radio system that you put me through last
Right,
time.
that's
No,
right.
no, I listened to that meeting, it was a good meeting.
I brought reinforcements with me, just in case
No, I
you
see him
didn't.
out there. I got him.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, all right, all right, we're almost on
We didn't
schedule.
approve it. We just.
School department, please. What time were you guys scheduled for, 7:45?
8 o'clock.
Oh, then wait.
You're ahead of schedule.
Then you've got to wait. Fantastic.
Yeah, you gotta do something after the last meeting, right?
What happened last?
I think I saw you guys there for about 2 hours plus.
9 o'clock.
Right, yeah.
It's time to get it done. Yeah. All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Would, I've asked everybody, and I've been asked to ask everyone to introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. This is my first FinCom meeting, so pleased to be here. Paul Villar, I'm the superintendent of schools.
And Courtney Keegan, the school business and operations manager.
Okay, great, welcome.
Good evening,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you. Really want to start by presenting 3 things tonight. One is an overview of our FY22 budget. Secondly is a snapshot into where we are with the schools right now and where we plan on being in the next year to a year and a half. And then finally end with questions from you, which I hope and I'm sure you'll have. So I shared with you some handouts. I'm a visual learner, and there's a lot of numbers here, so I wanted to make sure you had a handout. On the second slide is our FY22 budget summary. And what we're proposing is a level service budget. And the reason we're really not adding anything this year to our budget for FY22 is really due to 2 reasons. One, we're in the middle of COVID. And we don't know what's going to happen coming out of COVID with learning loss with students. So we need to make sure that we examine the kids when they come back. We just opened schools full-time for K-5 this week. In 2 weeks, 6 through 12 are out. So we're going to spend the spring assessing kids and assessing where the learning loss is. So before we add anything, we want to make sure we know what's going on with our kids. Second thing is we're in the final stages of a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, putting that together. So we want to finish that work before, again, we propose anything. So if you look at the slide deck, the first one is our FY21 budget appropriation in the amount of $13,793,820. In conversations with the town administrator, he felt comfortable adding a 1.5% increase to our FY21 appropriation. So that's $206,907, which brings our total FY22 town appropriation to just north of $14 million. Now, working with Mrs. Keegan and our leadership team, our FY22 proposed preliminary budget is $17,536,443. That's the cost to operate the Douglas Public Schools for next year. Working with Mrs. Keegan, we looked at grants and revolving funds to offset the budget. So we were conservatively prudent, given the fact that we still have 3-4 months in the school year, and we were able to use just north of $2.7 million to offset our proposed budget, which brings our preliminary budget to $14,823,201. So we're still short $822,000. So we did some more work, and we looked at net addition and reductions in staff, and I'll get into that. We're proposing a reduction of staff of approximately 15.5 positions and adding 2 positions for a savings of $327,000, and I'll dive into that momentarily. We looked at some additional grant money in the amount of $43,499, which brings our total budget to $14.452 million, an increase of 4.77% from last year, and our delta right now is $451,000. So if you go to the next slide, we need a plan. How are we going to mitigate that gap? And it's a combination of things to make that happen. First is additional line item reductions, going through our budget and looking at line item reductions. Next, possible use of additional revolving funds, so looking at our school choice to be able to mitigate some of that gap. Had a meeting yesterday with the town administrator, and a possible increase to the town's allocation beyond the 1.5%, and then potential increases in grant funding, which we'll find out about in July. So a combination of those 4 or 5 factors will help us mitigate the gap of $451,000. Next slide. What are the major increases from FY '21 to '22, and just highlighting about 5 of them here. Last year, everyone associated with the Douglas Public Schools, secretaries, teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, took a 0. Everyone did. So this year, we had to factor in a COLA. There's a cost associated with that. Textbooks increases from last year to this year, $37,000. Chromebooks for the high school, almost $25,000. Special ed tuition went up $347,000, and special ed contracted services from last year to this year went up $381,000. So those are the big ticket items that drove our budget from FY '21 to FY '22. And then we also took a deeper look at using revolving funds, and we increased our revolving fund usage from FY '21 to FY '22 in the amount of $173,000. Next slide talks about staffing, and we spent a lot of time looking at this. This was a plan that Mr. Maines and the school department started 2 years ago. They were ready to implement it last year for this year, and then COVID hit. So I just want to walk you through this and what our thought process was. Over the past 10 years, we've seen a 33.7% decrease in student enrollment. We're down about 500 kids in the past 10 years.
Is that right?
That's, yep.
That's K through 12?
That's K to 12, correct. Pre-K to 12 is what this is
Is
based
that
on.
because they're going elsewhere, or because?
This,
Or not making
it's a combination of things from homeschooling, to kids going to parochial schools, to school choice out, to BVT.
In Norfolk Aggie, yeah.
And Norfolk Aggie.
Moving.
Can I add, though, to that? It seems to me, and I came into town in 1998, at a time there was a boom of new housing, and all those kids cycled through the system, and we haven't had that kind of a boom in housing in 20 years. There's another little level of it,
Yeah, look.
but they're just not making kids
That's
in the
exactly
town of
what's-
Well,
Douglas
that's the other
way they
thing
were
too.
making kids.
Demographics have
Right?
changed tremendously. There aren't people
You-
having any kids anymore.
That's right.
The new
It's not just
families
Douglas.
Exactly.
aren't here. So the houses are here, the families are here, but the little school kids have mostly cycled through. Is that a contributing factor?
Yeah, all of the above.
That
And also
decrease?
statewide, the state of Massachusetts has actually seen a decline too as well. And I don't know, I haven't really looked into nationwide,
Yeah.
but I think it goes back to changes in
But
demographics and
after
having
being
children
in
and,
house, There'll be a boom of COVID
You know.
babies.
yeah, they are, yeah, we're.
They say the
yeah.
opposite. No, there are no COVID babies.
No?
No.
No.
No, people are anxious. people were nervous about who would bring it. Yeah.
We'll find out in, I don't know how many months.
We're a year into it,
People
so
didn't want to go.
Oh, that's true,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know what it is? When they get bored, they take out their telephone and play with it.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay. Moving on.
Excellent. Special comments.
So we're down about 500 students.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time frame, we've had a decrease in 13% in staff. Now, obviously, our staff isn't decreasing at the same rate of our students. There's always a story behind the numbers. In this instance, we've added staff, we've increased our special education programs, and we were able to lower class sizes. Now, our paraprofessionals in the same period of time, we had an increase of 9% in our paraprofessionals. So we took a good long look at this, and again, this was a process that started 2 years ago with Mr. Maines, and what we propose is 13.5 reductions in paraprofessionals and 2 full-time FTEs at the high school. And we're able to do this and still stay in compliance with IEPs, still be able to offer services, and not diminish any course offerings at the high school. Okay? Now, in order to make sure that we're staying in compliance, we do need to add a .5 ABA at the primary school and a new position, which is a special education teacher at the high school. So that's your net reductions, additions of about $325,000.
Could you explain what's an ABA and what's an FTE?
Okay, sure. So an ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analyst. They work with our students who have behavioral issues and making sure to do it. An FTE is a full-time equivalent. So it's a full-time teacher.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
if you don't mind,
No,
the other,
absolutely.
the other very big piece of this equation as well that we did start several years back is we have been slowly adding a teacher, a special education teacher per grade. Because really the model throughout the United States is to really have more of the teachers in front of the students. So we have been able to add a number of those positions over the last several years as well. And that's part of this equation too.
So a little looking ahead, because I want to be able to provide a snapshot into where we're going. We talked a little bit about a strategic plan, and we're in the final stages of implementing a 3 to 5 year, I'm calling it a blueprint for student success. And we're really highlighting 5 improvement priority areas. And the work that we do are going to be focused in these 5 priority areas. It's around academic excellence, making sure our kids achieve at a high level. It's building those community partnerships, us with the community and the community with us. The well-being of all, for staff and our kids, making sure mentally and emotionally they're okay to work and okay to learn. The global citizenship piece is huge, and fostering and promoting that growth mindset, all right? Not, I can't do it, but I can't do it yet. I'm not going to be able to do it today, but tomorrow we can. So that's part of the blueprint. In looking ahead to, just in the short term, some things we're looking at for this year, next year, and both the same at the primary and at the elementary school, we're really going to take a good hard look at our literacy program. You know that when you invest money in early childhood literacy and kids can read and write, and you set that foundation in K, 1, 2, 3, 4, it really mitigates issues when kids get to middle school and high school. So it's putting that emphasis on early childhood literacy. It's reading, it's writing, it's phonics. Through an ESSER 2 grant we got the federal government, we're implementing a summer learning program this summer. We're looking at our kids who are struggling. We're going to look at data that we collect this school year, and we're going to work with kids, probably about 10 to 15 kids per grade level, bring them in for a month over the summer to help mitigate the gaps. That's all grant funded. And then we're looking at Tier 2 school year interventions. For all next year, through a grant that we received, we're going to put in a program to work with kids who have struggled because of learning loss as a result of COVID, to help catch them up all next year and mitigate those gaps. That's all grant-funded things that we're doing at the primary and at the elementary school.
So all 3 of these programs are grant.
The literacy initiative isn't grant-funded yet. We're still in the process of putting our plan together, but the learning program and the Tier 2 intervention is 100% grant-funded. At the middle school and the high school, we're going to continue with that grant-funded program and put those interventions in place. At the middle school, we're looking at a schedule change, and that schedule change our interim principal is working on. And with the change in schedule, that one is going to help us with the with the paraprofessionals and run a more effective schedule. But we're also looking to add more options for kids during the school day. How can we add more classes to enrich the learning environment for kids during the day? The other thing we're looking at is some after-school programs for kids. One is after-school enrichment programs at the middle school, increasing athletic options for kids at the middle school, increasing clubs and activities, and then finally, trying to build some programs at the high school after school that our middle school kids can go to the high school and make connections with the teachers and with programs to help keep them in district. And then at our high school, Mr. Romano and his team over there have done a great way building a Pathways program. Next year will be year 2 of it. And we have one in business, we have one in criminal justice, and we have one in STEM. And what the Pathways program is kids would graduate with a business pathway certificate. And what that means is the kids will take 30 to 35 credits in pre-approved classes. They'll do a senior capstone project, which is like an end-of-the-year big project after 4 years. They'll participate in clubs relevant to their pathway, and then they'll have to either do an internship, work study, or community service hours in a program or in an area associated with their pathway. We're looking at doing some things with field trips to get kids out into these job areas. We're looking at expanding collaborative and Blackstone Valley courses. This year, we have kids enrolled through a grant in a welding program and in a cybersecurity program, so we're looking to build on that. And we'd love to do some stuff with Project Lead the Way. And the last one's kind of, I'm going to say, our little brag sheet. And it was just from the high school. I was meeting with Mr. Romano, and he was talking to me about just things that they've been able to do at the high school over the past 2 or 3 years. And we call this value added. These are programs that have been put into and implemented at the high school over the past 2 to 3 years. And I just want to go through them with you for people to see how we're making use of our resources. We've added the Criminal Justice Pathway Program. We've added 2 new courses in crim law and forensics. We've been able to take kids to field trips to state prisons. We've been able to buy textbooks for these programs and lab materials. In robotics, we've added the robotics pathway. We've added 2 new courses. We've been able to do transportation to 2 competitions, and we've been able to, again, create that STEM pathway. We've added 2 advanced placement courses for our high-achieving students, one in AP Computer Science and another one in AP Seminar. You can think of AP Seminar as a dissertation, where kids would pick a project and start at junior year, finish at senior year, so you kind of think of it as a writing your dissertation in high school. We've added foreign language and art graduation requirements. This has seen an increase in the number of kids taking Spanish and taking art, which is awesome. We've added a Tier 2 academic intervention program for our freshmen. This is freshmen who we've identified who are at risk and may struggle. It's giving them a little extra support to be successful. We've added, or are in the process of adding, several clubs for our kiddos. And then finally, we've rewritten our art, business, and culinary arts program to make them more engaging and create more opportunities for kids within the schools. So again, this is just the high school. I could have done the same thing with the middle school, the elementary, and the primary, but it's 8 o'clock at night. And, you know, it was just a conversation that I had with Mr. Romano that I want to share with the Finance Committee of the work that we're doing within the schools. So,
Is Spanish the only language offered?
Spanish is the only language offered.
Have you had DECA before?
I think DEC is in 2nd or 3rd year.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not brand new.
What's DECA?
I forget what it
It's a
stands for.
marketing,
Correct.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, it doesn't stand for anything, it's just,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it does.
really?
It's got a stamp.
Compete
Yeah, it does.
with
My
business
my
plan.
grandkids will.
It's a business club.
It's not
Like
like,
for something.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not an acronym, it's just letters.
Okay.
So on the map, bear with me, there's an updated delta of negative 451,528.
Correct.
And I see, I think what you walked through was where you reduced from the 822,474 down by 327,448 with the 15 positions you outlined. Where do we look, and I think you mentioned, at least talking with the town administrator about looking to maybe increase that 1.5 number.
Correct.
How else are we bridging the 451, 528 gap at the moment?
Okay, so we've looked at, and actually just last week, last Wednesday, we received a grant in the amount of $36,177.39. That's going to be used, that is being used to mitigate FY22, but we just received word of it last Wednesday. That was a rural grant. There were only, trying to remember, if it was only like 24 municipalities that actually received funding from that. We received funding from that grant for the first time last year as well, and that's how we purchased all of our elementary school iPads, which is great. So I'm sure you recall several years back, we were coming and saying, we really don't know, and even with the capital too, saying we don't know how we're going to get, all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of technology that we needed. But through Senator Fatman, just like the chief formally said, and Representative McKenna, we did receive that rural aid grant last year. We made excellent use of it for the Chromebooks and the iPads for the elementary school. And I hate to say that there's anything good that came out of COVID. I do not want to put it that way. But we did receive some additional funding. And as you know, for the reopening and also specific technology grant, the whole impetus was to get all the technology needed for learning at home. So we were able to replace a lot of our technology. The only thing that we had left in this budget that you have in front of you are 25 PCs for TV production AutoCAD labs, and that is what we're going to be removing $25,000 from the current budget that you see in front of you by use of that rural grant that we just received last Wednesday. So we're also looking at now, as you know, and I heard Mr. Vieira use a term that I use all the time, the prudently conservative. So when this came out on February 3rd.
I'm learning.
Yeah, on February 3rd, obviously my first, rendition of the budget before the school being that early, I'm going to be prudently conservative because we still have, the winter to go through. We had a COVID year. We don't know what things could break that we have to use our school choice for because there's no other funding because our repairs budgets are kind of, there are repair funds in every single school line, but still, like all other departments in town, it's at a lower amount. So that being said, I've done an analysis of FY21, both the school choice account, revolving fund account, and in our general fund, and I feel that we can eke some more out of that. I just did it quickly last week, and I need to do some more research on it, because I do a lot of in-depth analysis of particular accounts, like electricity. We're past the winter, well, we hope. And, thinking about that with regard to use of fuel, so I did a really good analysis, but I don't, I need to look at it again with fresh eyes again. So I probably will recommend, and it will only be school choice. Our other large revolving fund that we do use to offset the budget is circuit breaker, and that actually is really kind of low. I will not be recommending any additional use of circuit breaker. So we're using $955,000 out of that budget right now in FY22, leaving us a balance of projected balance going through next year, $322,917. We do not know at this time if we will be eligible for extraordinary relief. And like Jean says, with a lot of things from the state, you don't find out until it's too late. So that remains to be seen. We don't know if we're eligible, and I don't know if you're aware how that works, but the regular circuit breaker, they have an appropriation for it, and they don't know what claims they're going to get from all 351 communities. I don't know the number of school districts, because some are regional, but once they go through that process, whatever's left, then they see if you meet the threshold, number one, of 125% over the prior year for the extraordinary relief, but also they just have to divvy up whatever that remaining balance is among all districts, so you have no idea the amount of funding you may get, even if you are eligible. So that remains to be seen. But I have to be prudently conservative, and I always have to think prospectively as well, so that I don't put the school district in harm's way with regard to funding for future budgets. Because as you can see, we're already using $2.7 million. That's an extraordinary amount of money. And we do have things that do come up, that do break, we do have to fix, just like the fire chief had. And our means is to go to, I don't think we've ever come to the finance committee. We go to our school choice. That's what we do to address it.
So between revolving, line item analysis, and an extra 1% is about $138,000, so to go from 1.5 to 2.5 is an additional 138. So you take a combination of all those things.
All those things.
And that's how we get to the number we need to get to.
Yeah. I certainly, I can tell you
When do you
this.
think we'll see that? Will you be giving us a revised set of projections at some point?
So we
Probably.
have our
Public hearing.
public hearing on April 7th.
7th?
On April 7th.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can definitely tell you that even with what I know thus far with regard to additional use of grants and everything, all the knowledge that I have at this point, it will not change anymore by April 7th. I can tell you that in order for us to make up that delta to Mr. Vieira's point about maybe an additional up to another percentage point from the appropriation, I mean, there's no way that I can take that additional amount out of revolving. Because that will put us in a very precarious situation, and we just can't do that.
Where would cuts be to drop that 451 down? If, let's say you got 130, you have the 36 that Courtney mentioned, let's call it 166. You're still almost 300 short.
So we would probably look at textbooks. So if you look at our textbook increase from our textbook number, I think it's about 185.
Right, so we would.
To $190,000, so 190 would come straight out of textbooks.
Okay.
And then we would go through and we do the line item analysis and see where else we would get it from.
I saw one assurance, right, in bold.
We're not going to cut any more staff.
No.
Correct,
no more
correct.
staff,
No more staff.
And I can tell you that, first of all, when we do prepare the budget, and I know I say this every year, and I say it very sincerely, anybody that works at Douglas Public Schools, well, actually any of the town departments, I mean, I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, I mean, we're all pretty prudently conservative. We do not bring forward expenditure budgets, any highfalutin expenditure budgets. So really, they're also well-trained that they don't put anything in there that they don't need. And they even take an inventory of what they even have in the closets and everything, and, it just, yeah.
Now, are you saying you're going to have some reduction in staff?
Correct.
How are you going to do that? Are you going to do layoffs? Or?
We would do layoffs. So we've already notified the staff who are impacted. We did that 2 weeks ago, so they know, and I'll be sending out a formal letter to them in early April.
So.
We also notify the town as well for any impact.
That's the other thing.
Right.
Who's going to pay the unemployment?
That's already been, we've already spoken with the finance director and the town administrator.
Because that goes into they don't get it from the state, they get it from us.
Oh, no, I understand. That's
Yeah.
already been, it's my understanding. I mean, you'd have to speak with them, that it's already been incorporated.
So before we made this presentation, myself and Mrs. Keegan met with the town administrator and the town accountant, and we informed them of the 14.5 layoffs. Now, out of the paraprofessionals, the 13.5, many of those positions currently are unfilled.
Yes.
So that they're not filled positions because of people who resigned halfway through the school year, and we knew we were going to do this, and we didn't fill the position, or
Right.
we needed to fill the position, and then we knew we were going to be laying people off, so we didn't hire the position. So not all those positions will be collecting, because some of them are unfilled.
A good portion of it is attrition, right?
Exactly. We did
Some
not
of it's-
fill, right.
There aren't a lot of staff cuts here that we saw 5, 6, 7 years ago.
No.
No,
When we
no, not
really
like
had,
that.
right?
No,
Yeah.
no, nothing
And
like
not
that.
say one is okay, but,
Yeah.
right?
Nothing
And this
like
is
before.
seemingly somewhat systematic in an effort to reduce the paraprofessional numbers in a manner somewhat consistent with the recognized reduction in the overall numbers of kids.
Correct. So
Well,
we-
also I'm sorry.
Okay. So we've seen, in the past, I think it's 6 or 7 years, we've seen a decline in students on IEPs by about 19%. So we've had less kids on IEPs, so the need to have all of the paraprofessionals isn't there. In addition, our schedule at the middle school is very, very, very para-dependent. So we're creating a new schedule that will allow for us to not need all the paraprofessionals we have. Our middle school schedule runs, our 6th and 7th grade are on a completely different schedule than our 8th grade. So you can't share staff within the building.
Okay.
So by going to one bell schedule will allow us to share staff. The other thing is we're really pushing that co-teacher model, which is having a certified special education teacher in with a regular education teacher, which again, will allow for us to be able to reduce the paraprofessionals.
And back to our addition to, having one special education teacher for each grade as well, over the past 2 or 3 years, actually.
I know one of the things we had communicated about in the last 6 weeks was placement history for the last 5 years.
Yep, and I emailed that to you.
Okay, and I think I have seen that. I'll get
Yes.
that back. Did everybody see that? Okay. I know I saw the BVT one, I apologize, while you were talking, I was thinking, have I seen two? And I think that I have. Okay, thank you. All right. One of the things we've also been talking about, I think, for the past few years is the effort to, at that 8th grade step, to plan ways in which to encourage the 8th graders within our system to stay and head to the Douglas High School versus perhaps alternative schools. Is there further emphasis still developing on that?
Correct. So a lot of what I'm proposing here is part of that. So one, the schedule change will allow for us to have more academic and different academic offerings for kids within the school day. So that's one thing we're doing. I think by adding those after school, those enrichment programs at the middle school, we'll get kids excited about the middle school. One thing we're looking to do is build that connection at the high school and have middle school kids. So like an example of that would be, I haven't said this to me yet, but Mr. Rand is our robotics teacher. How cool would it be to have middle school kids spend 6 weeks up at the high school after school for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, working with our high school robotics teacher and our high school robotics kids, building those connections and doing that, so at least they have a connection with the high school. You have the JV kids who participate in sports who already have that connection. But if we can build that with academics and with other teachers, we're doing that. We also really want to start promoting the Pathways program and really marketing and advertising that, because it's a great way in business, criminal justice, and STEM for kids to have that career pathway. So Josh did some brochures for it. He did some marketing materials. We've tried to share that out. And next year, one of the big focuses is going to be really promoting that in the 7th and 8th grade with our kids, for kids in the 7th and the 8th grade to see what the options are at the high school. We have an interim principal now at the middle school. We have 3 finalists that we just named today for a new middle school principal. And this is going to be one of the things we talk about when we bring, it's 3 gentlemen, so him on board.
Okay. I know we had talked, and this last fall wouldn't have been applicable because of COVID, but we had talked really about changing the dynamic of how the kids in 8th grade got out of class to make a field trip, sometimes, let's say, to BVT, but not necessarily as often to Douglas High. And I think that we've talked in the last year or two about transitioning that to make more trips, more convenient trips, bring the kids up to Douglas High. Are we doing that? Is that?
So in this COVID year, it's been difficult to do this. So BVT didn't have that. But I know one thing we looked at next year with Josh is during January, a lot of the high school kids take midterms, and that's usually a half day. So when we finish that half day for midterms for kids in January, is bringing the 8th graders up to the high school the second half of the day to do things at the high school, such as eating lunch, visiting classes, meeting with teachers, and doing some programs up there. So Josh has already started planning that in January for a couple of days for next year.
And I saw in addition here to some of the clubs in both the middle school and the high school, I saw the sports in the middle school. Is there an effort to increase some of the sports options in the high school?
We haven't talked about them in the high school, but we're thinking about trying, because right now in the fall, it's just cross-country for kids. In winter, it's basketball. In the spring, I believe it's just softball and track.
You mean
At the middle school. At the middle school.
Okay.
So if we can try to get a couple of more sports in there, again, to...
Where they run 7 through 12, they're already heading into a team in 7th grade, right? I know my daughter ran cross country, and in 10th grade, she had 7th graders in there, and so they were formulating teammates.
Relationships.
8th grade, they wanted to stay with those teammates in the 9th grade.
Correct.
Things like that. I don't know if that's being considered when you talk about expanding the sports options. Yeah?
Go ahead.
Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
Because this was at the meeting that I had for the Wellness Committee yesterday.
Okay.
So you probably haven't heard about
I
it.
have not.
But one of the thoughts that's coming actually from one of the staff at the middle school is to put together a sports introduction enrichment so that we could introduce different sports. And one of the things that came up was field hockey. When we lost field hockey, so we didn't have enough girls that played field hockey. And
We did. They all got hurt.
Yeah, they got hurt.
Playing field hockey. Yeah, my daughter's done it.
No, we still let them have our cross country. But to introduce some different sports at a younger age and be able to carry that up so that we could potentially bring back field hockey, or, you know, if there was an interest in lacrosse, if
Yeah.
these kids were introduced to it and wanted to stay, if that was something that we could do. So we talked.
Okay, good.
Just hasn't come.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know I get on my soapbox on this, but I can tell you, as my kids came through, I can't emphasize enough how much, not just them, but their friends at 7th and 8th and heading to 9th grades, how important their perceptions of the sports programs, and you see it in our budgets of the number, you talk about having the school facilities, we've talked about this, right? We're sellers, right? We're sellers. We've got the structure to do it, and the more you can put a little bit of money into maybe the sports programs and things like that, 7th, 8th, to have the kids say, I want to go to, that program's here for me in 9th. Every kid that stays, 2 kids, 8 kids,
It makes a difference.
change is substantial. And we've got huge capacity still to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
You're talking to people who lived through when we cut sports and our
Yeah,
kids and
yeah.
our friends
Yeah,
had to
oh,
decide
yeah.
whether
And the
to
kids,
stay or go.
right, we
Oh,
had
yes.
that famous town meeting where people said, there's no crystal ball, we can't tell what will happen, and you knew what would happen, and it happened.
We watched it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily, we've watched it turn the
Yeah.
other way.
We want to keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep going,
With the
right?
Yes.
declining school population, how does that affect the money we get back from the state? Do they do it per student, or?
So we're held harmless, and I'll let Ms.
Yeah,
Keegan
so
explain the
basically,
formula.
and luckily, so we actually don't want to talk about this too loudly, but right now, we're actually, they have what's called a hold harmless provision. So typically, what you just stated is exactly how it would be. So a community that if their enrollment is going up, they
Right.
get more and more and more Chapter 70.
Right.
We're held harmless.
Yeah.
If we weren't held harmless, we would probably have lost millions of dollars by now.
Really?
Oh,
Millions.
yes. Oh, God, yes. So we're held harmless. So as much as we complain about, we're only getting $30 per student.
Yeah.
You know, which is the actual minimum.
Right.
Basic minimum.
Yeah.
I keep reminding people, a lot of times at school committee meeting, maybe not so much at, or town meeting,
Right.
if people, you know, that we just be grateful. Sometimes you just have to be grateful for things too.
Right.
Be grateful that we have the hold harmless provision.
So you're saying that we're actually getting $30 per student, but we're getting
More.
more numbers?
In other words, you get the same amount you got last year, but $30 per student.
Okay. Oh, okay.
In addition, so it's an
Two different-
additional 30,000, it is,
Okay,
because the,
So basically, they give us a lump sum, then so much per student.
nope, it's just a lump sum. So for FY '22, they're basing it on foundation enrollment of 1,106 student enrollment, which is
Right.
down 107 students from
Right.
FY '21.
Right.
And so we're getting the amount we received the prior year, which was $8,759,585,
Right.
plus $30 times 1,106 students, which is an additional $33,180 over the prior year.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's been for years, that's been going on for years. So yes, the line is pretty flat, but remember, it could be millions of dollars less. So sometimes you have to look at the other side of the coin.
Folks? Dick?
So, how many seniors are there this year? More or less?
I believe there's about 80 to 90, but let me try to get you a little bit more accurate of a number.
And then just for fun, how many sixth graders?
So this year, FY 2021, wrong chart, hold on.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So sixth grade, we have 87 students, and 12th graders, according to this, we have 92.
So is the cost per kid is different in the different schools? Like per kid in elementary is so much money versus per kid in grade 12, or not?
I believe it's the same amount, isn't it?
Well,
Per
as far
pupil.
as you mean from a DESC perspective, from a state perspective, or do you just mean general costs?
As we make our budget, do we assume it's going to cost more or less to do a sixth grade education compared to a
Oh, no, we
11th
prepare a
grade?
detailed budget. So in other words, we have exact staff, the exact amount they're going to make. Most of our budget, 87% is salaries. And then each school principal, per Mass General Law, principals are in charge of their budget and their building and staff and students in it. So they prepare the budget for their building. So they prepare, it's mostly going to be honest with you, because I do all of the staffing, I do most of the budget, actually. So they're just basically, it's going to be instructional supplies and textbooks is a large part of their budget.
So I guess my question is, if you're a sixth grade teacher and you've got, and I'm just picking sixth grade, pick a grade, you've got 10 kids in your class versus 15 kids in your class, versus a 12th grade teacher that has 10 kids versus 15 kids, is the cost to us higher or lower depending on?
Oh, well, it actually depends on, so what actually happens, I'm going to answer your question in two ways. So first of all, we do everything detail-oriented. So at every school level, they get sheets where they actually itemize every single thing that they need for their individual classes. Now, certainly say for instance, I'm trying to think of a class.
Chemistry lab.
Yeah, like a chemistry lab, thank you very much. At the high school, you know, it doesn't really matter how many students necessarily. I don't want to say that doesn't matter, but it's going to be a higher cost because of all the lab aspect of it, as far as supplies and things. Or maybe textbooks are going to be, they will be a lot more expensive at the high school level than or an AP course than they will be in an elementary level. So you really can't, every single grade is different. It has nothing to do really with the number of students except for quantity of what you're purchasing.
So if our enrollment is down system-wide, where does it hurt us the most financially? If we're low enrollment at elementary or low enrollment at high school, or it doesn't matter?
No, because really where it hurts us mostly, I assume you're speaking to the Chapter 70. And they don't make any distinctions between grades at all.
Oh, really?
No, they don't. No, they just have a formula that they go by. It's general per pupil expenditure. And actually, ours has actually gone up, which is kind of nice. Because we were second lowest, or the lowest for many years. I actually had that right here. Oh, here we go. All righty. So basically, it's the in-district full-time equivalents, average membership, in-district expenditures. So they take all of the district's operating expenditures for the in-district programs. So from all funding sources, except for out-of-district expenditures, which means tuitions, special ed tuitions, just the 9,000 series.
Right.
And then in-district expenditures per pupil is the total in-district expenditures divided by in-district FTE average membership. So there's kind of it's a very general, it's a broad district-wide calculation.
I see.
It's not based on anything individual. You know, it really couldn't be because there really aren't any two classes that are the same. You have different numbers of students in every class. The teacher in front of that class could be on a B1, or they could be an M plus 60, 11. You know, as far as the salary grid, their salary, so you really, it's just a broad calculation. And it has to be broad, too, so that they can make comparisons statewide with their per pupil expenditure.
So my other question is, as I was looking through the 25-page document, I was just looking at parts of the budget that were higher than others, and I noticed on page 3, for instance, therapeutic services is almost $500,000.
Oh, yes.
And then page 11, tutors is almost $500,000.
Okay, where are you talking about now? Oh, therapeutic services.
And then page 21, tutors are like 400,000. I mean, those three
No,
things.
you're looking at, and this is what Mr. Vieira spoke about this earlier. This is most of that's a $317,530. That's for evaluations, hospital tutoring, vision, speech, OT, PT, therapy, contractual, that's for special education district-wide.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just...
That's what you're calling therapeutics? Sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to clarify.
I'm just wondering, how much wiggle room is there in these figures?
There isn't.
Oh, God, there isn't, no.
Because it's
Again,
an outside contracted service
Yeah.
that the kids need it per their IEP,
Yeah.
and we have to pay it.
We're mandated
by
to
law.
provide those services, yep.
And that has the same thing to do with the tutors that he was mentioning?
Okay, the tutor.
So page 11, tutors are $466,000. Page 21, tutors, $349,000.
Wait a minute, page 11.
Are those all contractual tutors?
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not, no, that's paraprofessionals, ABAs, and tutors, that's staffing.
Okay, is there
That's
wiggle room
staffing.
with that or not?
No, because actually we just reduced it 13.5, so we did an analysis of the entire district, as Dr. Vieira spoke of earlier. So, and again, that's for special education students and what's required, and a number of those are one-to-ones too, which is required in their IEP, mandated services.
Are you looking on page 11?
Yes, he's looking at paras and EBAs.
But two just say 0, don't they?
No, he's looking at the whole entire thing. We gotta look at the, I know, yeah.
It's a grouped line item.
I'm all set.
Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Through the chair to
Bill's itching to go.
No, this is a simple one. So we realized a whole bunch of savings for buses, I think, during this COVID thing. Where does that go? How does that get moved, like into what bucket? Where, you know, is that something that might be able to offset next year's budget, or how does that work?
Oh, no. Can I? First, we didn't save anything in busing due to COVID. Are you talking about this year, FY 21?
No, FY '20. I think is what.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant 21, okay. Okay.
FY '20 closed into free cash.
But it's,
And do we have that number?
Free cash?
No, well, that would be nice too, but the actual amount of savings in, you know, past fiscal year.
I do have that money that was sent to you many times, I don't have it with me. I want to say it was a little over 300,000 on the turn back, and it's what it's considered, it's a turn back because it wasn't spent.
Sure.
And it flowed into free cash.
Yeah.
So if you look at the free cash history, you're going to find that FY '20s was higher, one, because we didn't do any capital, and two, because we didn't have snow and ice, and three, because we had turnbacks that we wouldn't normally have, like school bus transportation. So if you look back at your email, you're going to see the free cash history, and you'll also see a free cash highlight. I think I presented that back in December. And you'll see some of the things that close to the free cash, so you can get a better idea of what makes up free cash.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
and just for clarification, where does the bus transportation come from? Is it in the school budget or is it in our general fund?
It is budgeted on the town side.
Yeah, in the school budget.
So,
Town side, it's a separate warrant
If
article.
it's not on
Separate.
school stuff, it's on the town side.
Separate. Well, not one.
Okay.
so Doctor, if I can go back for a minute.
Absolutely.
I remember it
So-
being in the school budget.
On
It
the
is
the
in
sheets,
school
if you will, the slides,
Yes, sir.
FY22 budget information.
Makes no
So line items 4 and 5. And this is under a bullet point, major increases FY21 to 22.
Yes, sir.
There I do see, right, I see the special ed tuition increase 347.
Correct.
45, and the special ed
Yep.
contractual services
Yep.
increase 381. So that's almost $500,000, $750,000.
Correct.
Just in a year over year, just based on the kids that are in the district.
Just, correct,
Contractual requirements,
correct.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And based on kids who've moved in to town without us being able to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Just the way it works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and that's last year to this year?
That's last year,
That's
that's
correct.
correct.
21 to 22.
Okay.
Yeah, we
And
had
this-
one high cost on move-in.
So I think one of you said a few minutes ago, I thought I heard quickly, there was a lower number of IEPs.
Correct.
Are the IEPs, so I think I understand the special ed tuition is kind of kids that move out, right? That we
Correct.
have to-
Well, they're either in.
They don't
in-
move out, they
Right, a
go somewhere else and
residential
recover,
placement. They're in a
right?
Correct.
placement. In a placement, let's put it that way. Placement.
Including transportation. I think,
Including
right?
transportation,
Yeah,
correct.
Not all of them require it, but most do.
Right, and so the special education contracted services, is that part of that group or is that part of the IEP group?
Both. So and I had Mrs. Urquhart explain it to me. So some of it is, we contract out through FREC, so they'll come in and do some speech services for us. They might do some occupational services for us. But also, when we contract out through, if we send a kid to an out-of-district placement, you pay the tuition for them to go to the out-of-district placement, but then you also pay contracted services. So if that child has a one-to-one, that comes out of that contracted services line item. If that child needs additional speech, that comes out of the contracted service line item. So you're not, so the tuition, so you might send a child to a place and it might cost $125,000. 100,000 might be the tuition and the transportation, which comes out of tuition.
Yeah.
The other 25 might be a one-to-one paraprofessional and speech services, and that would come out of contracted.
Yeah, the transportation comes out of the transportation line.
Okay, sorry.
I ask for the parallel to mentally gauge those two numbers. Where's their base within the 25-page document? So in theory, did the numbers go from $2 last year to $349?
Okay,
Or
actually,
did they go from $1 million
well, I
to
have the figures, I have the figures
$1,347,000?
right here for
Yeah.
both special education tuitions
Where are
and
those?
FY '21. Oh, no, this is just a separate, I'm just a
Okay,
little,
fair enough. Yeah.
I did a cheat sheet for
Yeah,
myself,
cool.
Howard.
I respect that.
I have a binder full of cheat sheets.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so special education tuitions in FY '21 were $1,492,786. And then in FY '22, $1,845,31, with the
Okay.
difference being
That
$347,745.
gives, so it's about a 20% increase
Mm-hmm.
one year to the next. And again, just based on the randomness of who moves in.
Correct.
And who moves out, or who graduates.
And then in the
And then
same, go ahead.
Contractual services went from $350,485 to $731,615.
Oh, so that was a 100%
More than,
increase.
right, I mean, yeah,
Ah.
381,130, yeah, increase. So between those two and salary adjustments, I mean, that is
Sure.
the
That-
bulk
that's
of
right.
the increases.
We talked about BBT, we talked about the snow budget.
Because we actually had some
That's-
decreases
That's, right.
in our
I know,
budget.
Right.
You know, we had a
Right.
decrease of 20,000 in superintendent's salary line, and then we had a decrease in, sorry, in the.
It wasn't me.
in building repairs of 75,000. Because in FY '21, we budgeted for bleacher repairs for the middle school and high school, and a heat system glycol at the elementary school. And so that was 40,000
Yeah.
alone, never mind overall
But
high
these
repairs.
numbers
So
come in, and they,
you know.
they're major numbers, and again, it's a community, that's how it works.
Yeah.
But Those
Get
are
your
in
ups
there.
and downs.
I have a question, and I'll be, as macro as I can on this question. Do we perceive those numbers to be numbers that are going to be in that level for the next 2 to 5 to 8 years?
Now, which numbers are you referring to specifically, Howard?
Well, instead of
The tuitions and
1,492 to
contraction?
1,845, instead of the 354 to 381.
I have in my office a list of the students and their age. I don't have that with me, so I don't know if kids will age out.
Right.
How many kids are aging out this
Yeah,
year
yeah,
versus next year, the year after? I can get that to you tomorrow. But also, it doesn't account for anyone who moves in.
But not only that,
Those are big
I-
increase numbers,
Yeah.
suggesting that even if you cycled out an average number in, average number out,
Yeah.
you've still got these numbers in for a while.
Correct.
theoretically,
but
right?
I can tell you that we were really excited because we did have 2 large ones that were aging out. And then we did this, and then we had the move-in that was just as much.
Yeah, look, yeah.
So, you really can't
Yeah.
count on, because you just don't
It's the
know.
town, it's just
Day to
the way it
day to
works.
day.
It's just the way it works.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the way it works, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Heather, you look exhausted over there. You sure? You want 10 more? I've got more.
She's already heard it.
Heather, I've got more. Yeah, that's true. Repeat. right?
We got time, we'll read through
Just
it.
one point of order, can we ask how much the athletic fees are at Douglas?
Oh, yeah, you did this in your
always
previous
ask,
meeting, you
and
gotta
I never-
throw it
Well,
out.
they
Yeah,
haven't, we
I
actually
think-
haven't
yeah.
brought it before the school committee yet. I mean, currently, they're $200
It's
a
200.
student,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah,
I paid.
right.
you know?
And we'd like, and so, for point of order, when we get to our vote on whether to approve a different item, and we've asked, and I was asked last year, did I put the other group on notice that that would be an issue? They're on notice this year, correct, Heather?
Yes, sir.
They're officially on notice, and the other group punted, no pun intended, talking about sports fees.
Okay.
Should have intended.
8:45 at night, pulling that pun. Right? That they're on notice that we wanted the numbers to match, and officially, we've got confirmation that at least preliminarily, they're not even close still. Okay. Okay.
I think I know what the comparative analysis
We know where they're
is.
going, yeah.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. No names mentioned.
No, not even necessary.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay, thank you for accommodating us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
for coming in. Okay.
Good stuff.
So I think, Matthew, are we moving into executive session? We're not?
Get a snow and ice update?
We put that on the agenda.
Yeah, I thought it was in there.
Town administrator.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Eventually, if you don't want my update, that'd be
Yeah.
I thought we were,
It is on the agenda, but Matt has the update first.
Town administrator update. Right on
so
the
are
list.
people going to stay for the executive session?
I think so. You can ask them.
Okay.
Snow and ice update.
When you say into the executive-
I was going to say for
Yes,
executive session.
okay,
talk about
yes, okay. Okay. Well, then go ahead, snow and ice update. Let's go.
I have the news one.
No, I put this on every agenda.
Someone at our last meeting suggested there wouldn't be any more, and they were mocked for it,
That's
okay?
why it's on every agenda.
Put
I don't know if you were
that,
mocked.
someone mock someone?
I mean, it technically is,
You quiet, you. I put the snow blower away, I told you that.
There is no.
All right, so
It's
we're
gone.
skipping
It's all gone,
snow
it's all
update.
free.
Is there an update? There's no more, right? Excellent, that's a good update. Gene, that's a good update.
Next.
That's an update.
There you
I
go.
like it, I'll
Not
take it.
looking for any
Good
more.
enough.
Town administrator budget update. See, I covered those together.
How many do we have? 1, 2, 3.
You're going to give us the Microsoft versus Google update?
Gene, if I start throwing these agendas out with just one line item, slashes for all 7 topics, can we cover them all with one person and one, right? And be done?
Remind me, I need to
Continuance,
talk to
Mo?
you about scheduling.
Who's getting coffee?
I had my coffee. I knew what we were going to be doing.
Smart man.
Really?
Watched the last meeting, and it was very interesting, you guys, going back
The
and forth.
Dunkin' Donuts vendor out front.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Right.
Okay.
I was listening in my office as I worked on things, and I heard a request for the score sheet from the Capital Committee. So in the far right-hand column is the average score received by each proposal. Those scores were rank ordered by the outcome, and the top proposals that fit within the budget were funded.
They fit within budget.
Right. So when we came into the meeting, Gene and I had informed the Capital Committee that any amount between 700 and 800,000 would be a manageable amount in the use of the town's free cash. And the committee came in at 639. The highest scoring item that was the most expensive was $600,000 for a replacement fire engine. And you heard the chief say, you know, we had some factual dispute over the exact status of the equipment. So I did call an inspector that went through the truck soup to nuts. He did reject the truck, but he also said it was safe to put on the road if it was repaired. So for the sake of $5,000, I'm going to postpone the $600,000.
Like it.
Money,
Good money.
years. Good.
Absolutely. I concur.
Good.
I agree. Yes. I didn't have the whole story.
Now,
It's all right.
It hurts my ears when people argue about stuff that I don't know the answer to, right? So I don't know enough about trucks.
Yeah.
I did know the truck was listing slightly to one side, like a World War II battleship that had been hit by a torpedo, and it was the springs were shot. Okay,
I don't
so,
want to put too much on the public record.
well, it's over now, it's fixed. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, I know.
Good, it's fixed.
question through the chair to Matt.
He hasn't presented yet.
Well, he was
He's
talking
excited.
about the fire truck and about the 600,000, you know,
Go
the
ahead.
expenses. Do you normally budget for, like, you know that a truck lasts 25 years and you buy one, and do you normally allocate, you know, a certain amount in kind of rainy day fund or wherever to make up for that, or is that just never a reality to actually?
It needs to be a reality because the most cost-effective way to replace capital is to do a 20-year capital forecast. And you look at the useful life of a specific piece of equipment. Let's say it's a fire engine,
Yep.
and it has a useful life of 20 years, and we're going to run 2, right? Buy one, wait 10 years, buy another. By year 20, replace one. And that's the best way to do it if you're not going to have anything in reserve. In a bigger community, a community of 16 to 20,000 people, you might have 3 engines. They have a 20-year lifespan. You're going to buy one every 5 years, and you're going to put one in reserve for the last 5 years of its life. But there's always, the denominator is always, yeah, how many do I have running? The numerator is what's the useful life of the thing, and then whether or not I need anything in reserve. And then just replace them on a regular cycle. And when you do capital planning, you should organize each year's expenditures so they're more or less equal and manage your budget to arrive at the funds necessary. When you do that, you can look ahead and say, oh, 2 years from now, I need a brush truck. So this year, Assistant Chief, you're going to research the grant programs that will help us get a brush truck. So that if you fail to get the grant, you still buy on time because you go to capital and say, we applied for the grant 3 times, we didn't get it, we still need to replace it. It sounds pie in the sky, but when you do that and you minimize the amount of debt you take to finance your asset base, the amount of money you save is unreal, because to live through hell is to live in a town that doesn't understand that. And they buy everything with either debt or a lease. They pay 4.5%. I think at one point in the town where I worked before, we were spending almost $100,000 a year on interest and silly financing fees. And so that's all wasted money. You just gave somebody rental on their money and you didn't actually buy the things you need. So I think in Douglas, the plan, and I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman, I'll get to it quickly. I really want the ambulance department to nurture the ambulance receipts in such a way that whenever an ambulance is due to be replaced, which would be every 5 years, there's sufficient balance to replace the ambulance. And that's, I think we're kind of there. I mean, there's a pretty decent balance. And we have 2 brand new ambulances, so we won't have to replace anything for 4 or 5 years now. So we need to lay this out and get it all in place. Fire engines are more difficult. They're much more expensive. And there you have no choice. When you buy a ladder or a quint, the difference is a quint is a ladder truck with a pump on it and 500 gallons of water. Those are $1 million, 1.1, $1.2 million. So at that point, you really don't have any choice. You need a debt exclusion or a capital exclusion.
Thank you. That answers my question, good, thank you.
I've been sharing the budget with you since the time promised. Whether or not you were able to look at it depended on whether or not you were able to navigate the switch to Microsoft SharePoint. Part of it is to blame is me, right? I got frustrated with the SharePoint, so I started trying to share things with OneDrive, and I got frustrated with OneDrive. I used every which way I could get you the document, and actually what I did was I caused this like web. So we deleted all those shares, went back to SharePoint. If you follow the link I sent you to the Microsoft SharePoint for the FinCom, all your stuff is there. So the documents I've shared, your schedule announcements and other things that we're going to start to populate your little mini website with all this stuff. You have, if you're not in our domain, you have guest access. So I will turn on the function that will allow you to download the document for yourself. Right now I've got it shut off because I need to lock down the document. But I'll turn it on so you can make it your own copy and play with it, but the official version will still be what resides on the SharePoint. It's been a very busy week. Today at 2 o'clock, it's killing me. Today at 2 o'clock we had a meeting with the Strategic Health Group to finalize our premium renewal, our working rate renewal for next year. That was a really important part of the puzzle because, just for giggles, right, every family plan's about $24,000. Every 1 percentage point change in our renewal rate's about $22,800, right? So this year we had this interesting nexus of a decrease in our census, but about the underwriters came in with an 11, but we're going to knock it down to a 7 through use of the equity in the fund, because we came last year with such a huge surplus, a $500,000 surplus in the fund. We're going to use $84,000 of that to smooth out our trajectory to the higher place. But that allowed me to look at what I had left in the budget and say that's actually a real number. That's not going to be claimed by some other thing. In terms of quality control, I have one last step to take, some of which we'll discuss in executive session, but I've got to drill down on the police department's personnel budget. you know, we're still getting used to collaborative work, right? So I had formulas in a cell, and the chief entered hard codes and killed my formulas. So I got to go back over it. The change is that he has more younger officers than he thought when we first started the budget process. So it's actually a good thing. He's going to be requesting less than what I have in my spreadsheet. I just got to make sure I capture those personnel changes accurately. And for executive discussion, session discussion, plan prospectively for the costs of a contract, to settle a contract. I'm optimistic. There are some things I can say in open session. I'm optimistic that both of these contracts will be settled before annual town meeting, and the talks have been very constructive, and we've moved along at a very brisk pace, but it's just hard to do 2 contracts, budget, and all the major projects. What else? So on my plan, I've written a budget message for transmittal to the town. I think it's a fair summary. It is available, so if you go on the SharePoint and you look at the draft, it's about 8 pages now. Last night at midnight, it was 1 page. Now it's 8. I hit the highlights. I don't go through every last penny that changed or how many more paper clips we're buying. It had to be a material amount, but for the most part, it's all disclosed. At both the beginning and the end of the message, try to lay out where we stand in terms of our financial condition as a town and what our challenges will be going forward. For the benefit of the public, right now is a preview to what I want to publish. So Thursday, we close the agenda for the Board of Selectmen's budget workshop on Tuesday, the 30th. So I want to get all the backup material to them, which will include a budget transmittal message, the budget itself, the personnel supplement, which ties back. This will be the 3rd year I do this, so it ties back to each individual employee exactly what they're paid, how their steps and COLAs and any change in hours affected their salary for the next year. And a more detailed conversation, a capital budget. So really, those 4 components are best practices in all budgets. We should always have those 4 pieces together. So that will be Thursday. Tomorrow, I'll QC with Gene and make sure that I feel comfortable with the number. It's easier to answer questions than it is to take, 50,000-foot altitude on something that you've been buried in the weeds on for days. I would say that in terms of significant operational changes in the town, we have had a very experienced core group of employees who have served the town loyally, faithfully for a very long time. And over the next 3 or 4 years, many of them will begin to retire. So that's starting now. So this year, our custodian in the morning is retiring. The assistant in my office that assists the board and me is retiring, and the principal assessor is retiring. So we will save, because the people we replace them with will be at a lower step, but this year's budget will reflect a little bit of a bump because we're going to do this correctly. We're going to hire the person while the existing incumbent is still here and train them for at least 2 or 3 weeks. In Suzanne's case, we want the person to train for 6 to 8 weeks because there's so many pieces to that job. So that does up our budget. We're paying double for the same position for a period of time. It serves the best interest of the town because we don't want to obligate any retiree to be on call to us for important information. Once you retire, go sip your pina colada. We won't bother you. And we want the person who takes over not to have to struggle. You're being set up to fail if you're just thrown into it. I don't have that luxury with the community development department. I'm advertising. I've yet to receive any applications, but there are still 7 days left in the posting. So a lot of times they come in right at the end. So all of that information, so when I lock it down as my final that I will hand to the Board of Selectmen for their deliberations, everybody's access will be cut off, and you won't be able to download anything other than a PDF, because at that point it becomes their document. A new document will be created in the SharePoint, which will be the Board of Selectmen's budget, and any edits they make will be captured, and that will be the live version that comes to the Finance Committee. It's all going to come together very quickly, Mr. Chairman, so about a week, right? So they're going to do their workshop on Tuesday. I don't anticipate a lot of changes from the board. I don't want to speak for them, but there are a couple of proposals that I have that I'm wondering how they're going to go on, but it's the sum total of the things I'm asking them for are $75,000, $80,000. So
Okay, well, we should see that by, let's say, the end of next week. Okay,
the Board of Selectmen's budget,
yeah,
you will either see it after their meeting on the 30th or after their regularly scheduled business meeting on April 6th, right? So if they take 2 meetings to deliberate,
okay.
they have not in the past. I think you know that.
Okay. I'm just trying to head towards scheduling. Yes, Jean?
Do you have any appetite to meeting with the board on the 6th? I think we talked about it with Paul and Courtney on a joint committee, as we've done in the past? Or do you want to wait till your public hearing, which is scheduled for April 13th, and just have all the boards and departments here at that time?
I'm a fan of the latter of those proposals. Anyone else input? That appears to be the general consensus that would do it on the public meeting on the 13th.
So the Board of Selectmen wouldn't be there at that time?
Correct.
It would just be the departments?
Right, right.
If there's any questions, you're not looking for a joint? Okay.
But by then, we'd have the board's budget in front of us.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's April 13th.
April 13th, yeah,
April 13th is the public hearing.
yeah. Okay,
With a
so,
quick turnaround for the warrant that's due on the 15th.
okay. So does that conclude our administrator update and budget discussion?
Well, there's one thing in my budget proposal that directly involves the FinCom, so I'll flag it for you quickly. You've heard me say that our risk profile is less than attractive and that we're shopping various options for property and casualty lines. It is increasingly obvious that the only way we're going to get any kind of break is to take a rather extraordinary deductible. So right now, we're pretty low. We're about $2,500. Most municipalities our size are closer to $10,000. We're going to explore, we've asked the underwriters to give us quotes on either $20,000 or $25,000 deductible. Where would we put that? We'd put it in your reserve fund. It seems to be the best place to put it. So if we had an incident and we needed to pay our own deductible, it would come to you.
What if you had 2 instances?
You would get them both. And then once you exceed your deductible, you file a claim for your coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one.
We're not self-insured, but we're self-insuring that first strike, which would be 25 grand.
But what do you feel like the big savings would be there?
It's a global,
It's just
it's a
the once.
global deductible, not a single event deductible.
Right.
Well, the other thing,
We're going to parse that out with vehicles versus buildings. So we're going to make sure that that's not crazy, right? $25,000 at that point is buy a whole new car, right? Almost, depending on what you're buying.
Yeah.
So we kind of want a vehicle deductible to be lower than $25,000, but the building's got to be that high to get any kind of breaks. So, Mr. Chairman, Member Landry asked, are we going to get any discount for that? I'm trying to tread water, Phil. That's really all I'm trying to do. The funny things you discover on your...
So high that you're going to get
we're
a big increase if you don't do this.
So the budget has a 15% increase in our premium because we are at somewhere between 400 and 450% claims to premium. That's nutty, right? So, but the funny things you learn on the way to the forum, right? Who's here doing the investigation into our oil spill, but Travelers, and it occurred to me as odd that we're covered by Maya, but Travelers is here doing the work. So it seems to me that what my friends at Maya are doing is reselling Travelers to us, which, homie, don't play that. I don't know if you remember in Living Color, but I don't do that garbage because they're loaded up with overhead in between. So we are involved in a conversation with Travelers directly. Now, what's the upside for us is our other lines are really strong. So our E&O and other professional liability and other smaller liability are really strong. So if we break this up, we might get a discount. So between the deductible and the discount on the other lines, maybe we'll tread water, but we'll still probably need 9-10% increase in premiums. So the budget's extremely conservative, but it does involve you because you might start hearing about stuff you never thought you wanted to know about. All right?
All right, shall we go into executive session?
Yes, I think we turned the computer off at that point, which I'm pretty sure I know how to do.
Monitors up?
The tape goes on, correct?
Yeah, because
We
you're
have
too
to
big to
vote.
meet in a different
Need
room.
to go into executive
Yes.
session?
Yeah, you do.
All right, so let's vote.
Roll call.
I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss certain matters.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
Bill's motion?
Second.
Before he touches anything, are
Right.
you coming back at all, or you're done?
We'll have to come back.
To adjourn, right?
Can't we make a
The
motion?
motion you made
Yes.
would be,
I think you can adjourn and then do it.
Yes.
Yes.
You can adjourn, yeah.
You can adjourn first and then make a motion.
Gene,
to
are
go
you
into executive
satisfied
session.
other topics regarding scheduling can be covered off?
You answered my question. Your meeting on the 13th after tonight,
I think so.
Yep.
and you're comfortable with that?
I am. I'm extremely comfortable with that.
I did check the Red Sox opening day, so the 6th was not that date. What was this?
I'm making no comment about where I'm going to be on the 6th. That won't be here.
Nice.
But I don't think it's the opening for the...
I won't be at Fenway Park. That's correct. Good check.
I did.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gene. Okay, so I have the motion. Dick, you seconded it, correct? Let's make a roll call vote. Lynn, starting with you, and
Sorry, to be clear, is this for the motion for going into executive session and adjourning at the end of executive session, or is this just the executive session?
so the exact language is to return from executive session for the purposes of adjournment.
no,
means that
no,
she has to
no,
stay.
no, no.
That's how everybody
no, no.
makes it.
No.
Howard's the chief.
Well,
Tell
you
us.
do what you want.
So
but-
I believe, Phil, you made a motion to go into executive session and simultaneously to be voting on not having to return to the general session, but adjourning at the conclusion of the executive session. Is that what you did?
I did.
And
That's what my second one.
okay, let's vote on it.
Now I'm clear on
Distinction,
it.
difference,
Thank you.
tomato.
Lynn, how would you like to vote on that?
Very
Would you like to repeat it
Linda
first?
Zuli, I vote aye.
Carol Dogalinsky, aye.
Howard D'Amico, aye.
Sandy Kuiper's aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Bill Landry, aye.
Dick Vandenberg, aye.
And so we are going into executive session. I think we can then